right, this is Kent Hovind. If you're unfamiliar, he's like a far-right conspiracy theory, young earth creationist nutcase. And this is his seminar series on the dangers of evolution. He already covered Hitler and how Hitler was an evolutionist. He wasn't. It's incorrect. He already covered that, and now I think he's about to cover Stalin and how Stalin, as an atheist, was an evolutionist. So let's give it a listen.
That God does not exist or is not necessary, that man is responsible, ties hand in hand with humanism. Roger Baldwin, the founder of the ACLU, the American Communist Lawyers Union,
The ACLU is bad, really?
said communism is the goal. The purpose of the ACLU was to advance communism. That's why they were founded.
Okay, hey, let's find out if this is real. Let's see if we can find an answer to this. No need to wonder, just loaded up our question gun. Let's go answer hunting. The ACLU, if you don't know who that is, it stands for the American Civil Liberties Union, and they've defended everybody of all sides of the aisle. Their goal is the protection of human rights. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. The KKK wanted to march through a town in the 70s, I think, famously, and the town was like preventing them from getting the permit, and the ACLU fought on their behalf. That's pretty controversial today. They don't really talk about it, but the bottom line is that they fight for all civil liberties, period. Your right to free speech is sacrosanct. Now, tell me, why would a young earth creationist like Kent Hovind want to fight against civil liberties? This, apparently, it was founded at the ACLU in 1935 or somewhere in there. I didn't realize it was that old. But it is very obviously a different political environment today than it was in 1935 all over the world, not even comparable. But just to kind of read the context here, Roger Baldwin did write in 1935, I seek social ownership of property, the abolition of the propertied class, and sole control by those who produce wealth. Communism is the goal. The statement appeared in his Harvard class book entry from June 1935. However, here's the crucial context that he's omitting. Baldwin completely reversed his position. After the Nazi-Soviet Pact in 1939, Baldwin became completely disillusioned with Soviet communism and called it a new slavery. In 1940, he actively purged all Communist Party members from the ACLU board, including labor organizer Elizabeth Gurley Flynn. This is decades before the Medal of Freedom. Jimmy Carter awarded Baldwin the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1981, over 40 years after Baldwin had abandoned his pro-communist views and actively worked against Communist Party influence. That's dirty. To put that shit in this seminar episode, that is fucking dirty. The dude completely flipped positions. 100%. And Hovind is claiming it as though it's real. He's claiming it as though this is the position the guy held. That is seriously fucking disgusting. What is wrong with Kent Hovind? That is so egregious. I'm comfortable calling that a flat out lie about the guy, right?
The purpose of the ACLU was to advance communism. That's why they were founded. Now, Moses Mordecai Marx Levy, alias Karl Marx, the founder of communism, had written a paper when he was 17 years old telling how much he loved the Lord. Then he went off to college, studied philosophy, turned his back on God, and developed his theories of communism, which go hand in glove with evolution. Did you know 75%?
No, communism and evolution do not go hand in glove that way. He did this with Nazis as well. Claimed that eugenics and evolution and Nazi ideology are synonymous with each other, and that's just not the case. Hitler was not an evolutionist, quote unquote. He was a eugenicist, which was a very popular thing to be at the time, and it had existed long before evolution was around. It was not even based on evolution. All right, he was baptized as a Protestant at age 6, Karl Marx was, after his father converted from Judaism to Christianity for career reasons. I did not know that. That's very interesting. As a high school student in Trier, Marx wrote Christian-themed essays and demonstrated knowledge of Christianity. Here's what's misleading. He did not love the Lord. It's a massive exaggeration. Marx's father converted to Christianity primarily for pragmatic reasons. Heinrich Marx was a lawyer and needed to convert to keep his career under Prussian law. He was a free thinker who didn't believe any faith was superior to another. The family was nominally Christian at best. And this is the exact type of person that Hitler actually went after. And this is like the heart of the grievance with the church, as far as there was a grievance in Germany. The grievance was Hitler believed, or the German Christians, the Deutsche Christen group, they believed that if you converted to Christianity from Judaism, you were still Jewish because it was a race, which is incorrect. It's not a race. Race is not real. It's a fabricated, pseudo-scientific belief that's existed since the 1700s primarily. Before that, it was more, hate was based on ethnocentrism, not really racism in the same way. Anyway, that's really interesting that Karl Marx was like one of the main people like targeted by Hitler's hate of Jews. Marx's father was already a free thinker who viewed Stoicism, Judaism, Christianity, and Hinduism as equally valid and vulnerable. Marx didn't come from a deeply devout household that philosophy corrupted. So pretty much everything that Hovind said here is a lie.
And the kids that go from Christian homes to public schools are going to lose their faith after 1 year of college. You parents better think long and hard before you send all your kids off to school. Are you sending them off to a secular university so they can make more money in life? Is that your goal? You willing to risk, 3/4 of them? I'd recommend at least one good year of Bible college before they go to a secular school, even if it's not accredited, just to get them grounded in the Bible. And really get them grounded in creation before you send them off there. High casualty rate at those places. Now, Karl Marx later said in life, he said, "My objective in life is to dethrone God and destroy capitalism."
Let's see if we can get an answer on this one. I'm sorry, I want to go through every single one of them. I don't want him to get away with a single thing. I guess there's a Snopes article on this. Oh my God. Oh, fascinating. Apparently, this is circulating as a Bernie Sanders quote. Oh, wow, dude. Oh my God. Okay, I'm sorry. Hang on. This is really interesting. Give me a second. It's so interesting to me how people completely bastardize and twist around and like reuse the same garbage over and over and over again. Here's the Snopes claim. Bernie Sanders wants to dethrone God and destroy capitalism. A fake image purportedly showing a tweet from Senator Bernie Sanders claims the senator wants to dethrone God. Isn't that fascinating? They make the same claims about different people throughout history. According to a Quora answer, this is completely fabricated. Completely fabricated. Not only did Bernie Sanders not say it, but Karl Marx didn't say it either, as far as I can tell. According to a Quora answer, this quote comes from a blog called 316, run by Richard Marshall, who supposedly interviewed Marx, which would be impossible since Marshall is alive and Marx died in 1883. No primary source citation, only appears on quote aggregator websites. The phrasing is suspiciously modern. My object in life sounds more like contemporary motivational speak than 19th century German philosophical writing, translated to English. Marx never expressed goals this simplistically. He was critical of religion and capitalism, but his writings are way more complex and theoretical than this. That's the bottom line. I find it so fascinating that somebody comes up with a quote that they spread around and attribute to everybody they don't like. That is so ridiculous, right? Is that not fucking wild to you? Kent Hovind lies like he breathes. All right, now let's continue.
Is to dethrone God and destroy capitalism. Karl Marx is the founder of communism. He based his philosophy on evolution.
I'm sorry, I gotta check everything. The quote is real, but Hovind's framing is very misleading. I'm pretty sure Karl Marx knew Abraham Lincoln, too. Marx did write a letter to Ferdinand Lassalle on January 16, 1861. Darwin's book is very important and serves me as a basis in natural science for the class struggle in history. The Conway-Zirkel citation appears legitimate. What's massively misleading? The timeline is backwards. Marx published the Communist Manifesto in 1848, which begins the history of all hitherto existing society, is the history of class struggles, quote unquote. Darwin's Origin of Species wasn't published until 1859, 11 years later. Marx didn't base his philosophy on evolution. He'd already developed his theory of class struggle before Darwin published anything. Marx saw a parallel, not a foundation. That being said, I feel like communism has added a lot to our understanding of, like, politics. I'm not a communist myself, but it's contributed to the way we see ourselves in the world and in government, right? And it's been very useful for that purpose. I don't see why anybody could bitch about, like, having a more refined understanding of our place in the world, if you will, or workers' rights. I don't believe communism is possible, to be perfectly honest. I could be wrong, but I just don't think it's possible. Additionally, if for no other reason than because corruption always slips in, there's always somebody looking for an opportunity to take advantage of a situation, and the many communist attempts in society have proven that, right? The many attempts have proven that corruption will always slip in. There will always be somebody trying to take advantage. I don't know how you get around that corruption problem. Authoritarian corruption problem. I'm open to ideas, I just don't see it as possible. But you know what I wouldn't do? I wouldn't lie about it brazenly.
On evolution. He tried to dedicate his book to Charles Darwin. He wrote a letter to Charles Darwin. He said, dedicated to Charles Darwin from a sincere admirer, Karl Marx.
That's possible, I suppose.
Darwin's wife said, honey, you better not accept this. This may be a little much, okay? Karl Marx had 6 children, never worked a day in his life. 3 of his kids died of starvation in infancy. 2 others committed suicide.
So you're saying he was suffering terribly? I wonder why he would have written a book about how suffering is bad. Knock me over with a feather. I don't understand. What could have motivated him to write something like that? Also, what's this? What is this picture? Fourth Reich of the rich? Is that what? What am I even looking at? Why am I looking at this? Why did he put this on the page?
Not a successful model father.
Oh, that's where he got the information. I see. They're selling it on Creation Science Evangelism's website. Notice that citation to CSE. That's Kent Hovind's website. Okay, this claim is partially true, but significantly distorted. First of all, Marx and his wife Jenny had 7 children, not 6. Is this a lie on Kent Hovind's part? Was this an incorrect point in his book? Who got this wrong? Somebody got this wrong, right? 3 children died young, not necessarily in infancy, but none of these deaths are documented as being from starvation specifically. The deaths were related to the brutal poverty the family faced in the 1850s in London, when child mortality was extremely high for the poor, but starvation as a direct cause is not well documented. The 2 daughters, Laura and Eleanor, did die by, but this happened decades later when they were adults. Laura at age 66 in 1911, Eleanor at 43 in 1898. So all of this is a lie, basically. The entire thing is a lie, pretty much. Laura and her husband, Paul Lafargue, died together in a pact after deciding they'd given all they could to the socialist movement. These weren't desperate acts during Marx's lifetime due to childhood trauma. They were political and personal decisions made by adult women long after Marx died. Funeral attendance. According to research from contemporary sources, 13 named individuals attended at the funeral. The one newspaper account claims 25 to 30 relatives and friends attended. The 6 people claim is false. Estimates range from 11 to 13 mourners to 25 to 30. So, I think every single statement made in this was a lie. Karl Marx had 7 children, not 6. 2 died of starvation, not in infancy, but older. 2 others committed as adults, in their 60s, 50s or 60s. When Marx died in 1883, only 6 people, 15 to 30 people attended his funeral, actually, close friends. Every single thing, all the way down, was a lie. It is so wild to me how the guy lies so brazenly. Oh my God. Again, not a communist here, okay? I'm not a communist. And I have to sit here debunking this bullshit. This is nuts. Check this out. This is a survey from 538, which has generally been considered like a reputable polling website. But this should show how polls are manipulated. Almost nobody wants free bus service, according to this poll in New York City. Here's the poll. Here are the 2 questions they asked. Bus service should be fast, fare-free, and universally accessible. Eliminating fares would make public transit more affordable and efficient for working New Yorkers while reducing conflicts between riders and operators. That's option A. And option B, making buses free for everyone sounds nice, but it would make things worse in practice. It would turn buses into rolling shelters for homeless people and drug addicts, invite more crime and antisocial behavior, and leave even less money to fix slow, unreliable service. This is the effect of fear on a population. The poll seems honest. It seems balanced. On one side, we have an honest representation of the left, and on the other, we have an honest representation of the right. But the right-wing position is built entirely on fear. And when you build something entirely on fear like that, you drag people from the left to the right. This is dishonest polling. If you wanted a real, honest poll, you would have said, should buses be free? Yes or no. Simple as that. And, you know, at the end of the day, that's exactly what Kent Hovind is doing. He's creating a fear environment, a fear response to people, trying to scare the bejesus out of everybody he possibly can because he knows that fear drags people over on positions. It's dirty and propagandistic and disgusting.
Father. When he died, 6 people attended his funeral. Karl Marx developed, though, in 1848, the Communist Manifesto, how to destroy a country, how to have it be taken over by communism. First thing, you abolish private property. Now, everything Marx did intentionally was anti-Christian. If the Bible's for it, he's against it.
Just a reminder, I would really appreciate it if you guys checked out my Patreon. If you're not going to donate, you don't have to, but follow me there at the very least, owenmorgan.com/Patreon. Just in case something happens with the government or whatever. It would be really good if you had some way to connect with me and my content. I'm really concerned about that, and maybe you should consider that for other creators too. No, that's not the case. I believe he did view religion as a weapon used by the state against the people, which I think we can clear as day see is absolutely happening, right? In the United States, it's absolutely being weaponized by the state against people, 100%. And regarding this PowerPoint or whatever, it's mostly accurate but oversimplified and slightly misleading. The actual 10 measures from Marx and Engels are completely different. Abolition of property in land and application of all rents of land to public purposes. A heavy progressive or graduated income tax. Abolition of all rights of inheritance. Confiscation of the property of all emigrants and rebels. Centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly. Centralization of the means of communication and transport in the hands of the state. Extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state. The bringing into cultivation of wastelands and the improvement of the soil generally in accordance with a common plan. Equal liability of all to work. Establishment of industrial armies, especially for agriculture, combination of agriculture with manufacturing industries, free education for all children in public schools. So number 9 is misleading. The original is, so on Hovind's thing, it says corporate farms, regional planning. Actually, the original is about combining agriculture with manufacturing and distributing population more evenly. Corporate farms and regional planning distorts it. Number 8 is also misleading. Hovind says government control of labor. Actually, the original says equal liability of all to work. Establishment of industrial armies, not government control of labor. So he twisted it around, but okay, let's continue.
Christian. If the Bible's for it, he's against it. See, the Bible makes private property a real serious issue. Ownership of private property is critical. You can't have freedom without property rights. What good's it do to say you got all kinds of freedom if there's no place to exercise your freedom? Leviticus 25 says the 5th.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's so fascinating that this dude is like writing capitalism into the Bible.
25 says the 50th year was hallowed, and it's the year of Jubilee. You could not possibly lose your property permanently in the biblical system.
Dude, I love this. This is so funny. Do you know what that's actually talking about? freeing slaves. It's talking about slavery. In a Jubilee year, you can't lose your slaves. Seriously, like, he absolutely knew that, didn't he? I can't believe that he even tried that. That is vile.
It says every man has his own vine and his own fig tree. Drink waters out of your own cistern, waters out of your own well. Private property is essential. But Peter Burrell, president of the Audubon Society, said we reject the idea of private property.
Yeah, so I guess the Bible does support the idea of private property. Keep in mind there's a difference between private property and personal property. Your toothbrush is personal property. Like, private property would be assets, land, companies that you own, that kind of thing. And in a communist system, I view communism as more of like a goal that's used to drag the discourse to the left, more than an actual goal that people set to try to reach. I don't really think that it works in practice, but I'm willing to be proven wrong on this. It just, from everything I've seen, it doesn't seem to work in practice because of corruption, if nothing else.
Huh. Guess where I know where he got that. Karl Marx developed the idea of a graduated income tax. The more you make, the more they take.
Which is what we have in the U.S., yeah. And it's something that Hovind, of course, does not adhere to, having not paid a dime in taxes literally his entire life. At this point in his career, when he released this, I believe he owed like 30 years worth of taxes.
That's Karl Marx's idea. Okay? He said you need to abolish rights of inheritance. The Bible says a good man leaveth an inheritance to his children's children. Karl Marx was against that.
That's true. Yeah, I'll give him that one. The fact is, though, we don't want to base our society on the old law. Trust me, Kent Hovind, you know this as well as everybody else. You don't want to base our society on the old law, on the Old Testament, which is why Kent Hovind doesn't have a problem with eating shellfish or pork or wearing cotton and linen blends or anything else, which is why he believes that love your neighbor as yourself and love God with your whole heart, mind, soul, body, and strength comes above not eating shellfish or pork. Why are you quoting the Old Testament to us? It doesn't apply to Christians today because Jesus fulfilled the law.
Confiscate property rights. Evolution's the foundation of communist philosophy behind the money powers. Karl Marx said we need a central bank.
Wait, I'm sorry. Why did you stick evolution in there? What does evolution have to do with literally anything in this conversation?
This was a communist idea. The banking system we're using today in America, the Federal Reserve, is a direct result of Karl Marx's thinking. Nothing federal about it.
Well, no, it's not federal, actually. Yeah, the Federal Reserve is a private entity. But okay.
Private bankers that run our currency. Bible says love of money, root of all evil.
That's bullshit. That is a delusion granted to the poor by the rich. Money makes you happy. Okay, money does bring happiness. Somebody tells you it doesn't bring happiness, they're lying to you. Money buys jet skis, and I've never seen a sad person on a jet ski before.
All evil. What you need to do is real simple. You follow the yellow brick road.
Isn't it so fascinating how Kent Hovind is arguing that money is evil, or the love of money, or whatever, and then bitching nonstop about how he has to pay taxes? That is so fascinating to me. The cognitive dissonance. There is no consistency in this dude's beliefs. None.
It was real simple. You follow the yellow brick road. By the way, that whole movie was made to teach us something very interesting. The yellow brick road, the land of Oz, OZ, ounces, gold. You had a straw man, no
What?
brain. Tin man, no heart. That's commerce, is heartless. A long, interesting story behind.
I'm sorry, wait a minute. Are you telling me you think that the Wizard of Oz is an anti-capitalist, is anti-capitalist propaganda? Okay. For good measure, let's find out. Wizard of Oz, anti-capitalist propaganda. I'm sorry, man. I'm having so much trouble believing this, but I just want to find out. This is a lie. In 1964, educator Henry Littlefield published an article arguing the Wizard of Oz was a political allegory about late 19th century monetary policy debates. Economist Hugh Rockoff, wow, what a name, later suggested the city of Oz earns its name from the abbreviation of ounces, in which gold and silver are measured. So decades after it was made, somebody who didn't know anything about, and didn't know the people or whatever, made the claim. There's absolutely no evidence whatsoever. Zero evidence of this. You may be able to come up with some cute little coincidences, like ounce is abbreviated as OZ, but that's as far as it goes. The creator never even implied such a thing.
The real meaning behind that movie. Karl Marx, one of his ideas was government ownership of communication, like our FCC, or transportation, like the TSA. Karl Marx's idea, see, the government's going to take over transportation. They've already taken over the airports, haven't they?
Oh, please.
Try to fly. I fly 215 times a year, last year. Just see what you got to go through with government regulation in transportation. Government ownership of factories and agriculture. Government control of labor. This was all Marx's idea. Corporate farms and regional planning. Everything exactly backwards to Christianity. Free education.
It's not exactly backwards to Christianity. It's just like the problem is you can't run a system the way that Jesus believed that you should. It's literally impossible. You certainly can't run a system the way that the Old Testament expected you to. It's literally impossible to do. Because, for example, Jesus believed that we should sell all our things and become itinerant preachers. If you're a real Christian believer, that's what you should do. Not everybody can do that. The economy would literally collapse. It's not possible. If we want to operate in a civilized society, some portion of people can do that, but not all Christians can do that. And the reason that Jesus laid down those ideas and precepts is because he believed the end was going to be here in his lifetime. He thought he was going to see the end, and it didn't come. But if you really want to go down this road, Kent Hovind comparing communism to the Bible, let's compare capitalism to the Bible. Yes, there was private ownership in the Bible. That's absolutely true. But what about selling all your things and giving to the poor? That sounds like communism to me. What about sharing resources? What about loving everybody? The point is that Kent Hovind is completely full of shit and selectively picking which things he wants to zero in on because he wants to demonize communism. For the record, I don't want to compare everything to Germany constantly, but the communism hate, the communism fear-mongering is right out of Nazi Germany, directly picked right out of it. It was exactly the same.
For all in public schools. That was Karl Marx's idea, our public school system. Hitler said, let me control the textbooks, I'll control the state.
He did not say that. That's a flat-out, bald-faced fucking lie. It is so wild to me that this guy can just lie. Brazenly, randomly, knowingly, intentionally lie like this. This is not true. Public school didn't even exist in its current form back then. What a thing to say, seriously.
Martin Luther said, I am very much afraid that the schools will prove to be the great gates to hell unless they diligently labor in explaining the scriptures, engraving them on the hearts of the youth.
Again, public schools did not exist at the time. I'm suspicious of this quote for that reason, but I mean, some schools existed, like universities existed.
I advise no one to place his child where the scriptures do not reign paramount. Every institution in which men are not increasingly occupied with the Word of God must become corrupt.
Martin Luther. All right, let's find out. This is a real quote from Martin Luther. That's true. Luther wrote this in his 1524 work to the councilmen of all cities in Germany that they establish and maintain Christian schools. I greatly fear that the universities are wide gates of hell if they do not diligently teach the Holy Scriptures and impress them on the youth. The quote appears with slight variations in wording. I'm afraid that the schools will prove the very gates of hell. I am much afraid that the schools will prove the very gates of hell, and I greatly fear that the universities are wide gates of hell. But here's the context that he omits. He was condemning the ungodly schools of the Pope before the Reformation, which he believed were controlled by the devil. They weren't public schools K through 12. We didn't have those until fairly recently in the grand scheme of things. This is just a flat-out lie, again, as usual. I mean, it's so insane to me that this guy can brazenly lie like this. This was not secular public education. This was religious education that was being taught that Martin Luther was speaking out against.
Here's a 1777 school book used here in America, the New England Primer.
Again, public school didn't exist, so this must have been a university. Let me just find out exactly when they were created. I believe that the public school system was, one could say, I suppose, created by a Prussian concept. Prussia was like a state of Germany during World War II. But before World War II, Prussia was its own independent body. And they had belt buckles that said Gott mit uns on them, famously. And it was so popular a term that it was adopted by the German Wehrmacht, the actual German military. But the German Wehrmacht was actually a very small segment of the military. It was the official military, but Germany was banned from having a military over 100,000 men. So they created a paramilitary group called the SA, also known as the Brown Shirts, who would go around training in like military style and fighting. They were like the Proud Boys, basically. They were fighting on the streets on Hitler's behalf. And they had something different on their belt buckles. I don't remember what it was now. 1635, Boston Latin School, the first public school, though not free or universal. 1647, Massachusetts Old Deluder Satan Act required towns to establish schools. Okay. 1780s to 1840s, early public schools existed, but were inconsistent and often required fees. 1852, Massachusetts passed the first compulsory attendance law. 1870s to 1910s, the modern public school system really took shape during this period, with most states establishing free, tax-supported compulsory education. And by 1918, all states had compulsory attendance laws. That's right in line with when Prussia was taken over as a state of Germany down the line. So, yeah, that sounds about right. This is from 1777, this book. I'm going to assume that this is not from a K-12 public school the way that he wants to portray, because, of course, that's what he's talking about right now, right? K-12 public schools and how they should teach children about Jesus. That's not what this book is from. I just about guarantee it, because they just didn't really exist at the time. 1918 is really kind of when they were fully in effect.
They taught the kids the alphabet using poems like this.
Wow, check it out. Look, this is a first grade textbook, it says. Isn't that fascinating? He's just lying here. So the New England Primer did exist and was widely used. It was heavily religious, included catechisms, prayers, Bible verses. Some young people did enter college earlier in that era. But public schools is anachronistic. In 1777, public didn't mean what it means today. Most schools were local, community-based, often church-affiliated. The modern tax-funded public school system didn't exist yet. And then the second claim, used until the 1900s. This is true, but it obscures that education challenged massively. This is true, but it obscures that education changed massively during this period. By the late 1800s, the primer was outdated and being replaced by secular textbooks. And Hovind is implying that religious textbook equals smarter kids who went to college at 12, but that's insane for obvious reasons. College and public school obviously meant completely different things at the time. Most children didn't go to school regularly or for many years. College in the 1700s and early 1800s was very different, often just Latin, Greek, and rhetoric and theology. College entrance requirements were lower. You basically needed to read Latin. Only wealthy boys typically went to college, and the handful who entered young were exceptional cases, not the norm. So he's just, again, lying here. He's just flat out bald-faced lying here, of course.
Book used here in America, the New England Primer. They taught the kids the alphabet using poems like this. In Adam's fall we sinned all, heaven to find, the Bible mind, Christ crucified for sinners died. Can you believe that's a public school textbook?
It was not a public school textbook, quote unquote.
Here's how the kids learned their alphabet again. A wise son maketh a glad father. Bible verses for all the letters of the alphabet. You ought to read Fourth Reich of the Rich if you want to study more on education and how money powers have gotten involved in this. But
oh my God, dude, I really need to. John D. Rockefeller uses money. All right, let's find out what this is about. Citing it. I'll find out about this. We'll come back. We'll circle back around to this book right here.
By the way, guys, check out my new shop, owenmorgan.com/shop. I have a bunch of really cool designs on there.
communism is totally anti-Christian in every possible way. This is the communist rules for revolution. For number one, you corrupt the young, break down the moral virtues. Just incredible the way this is what they've done. Corrupt the young, get them away from religion, break down the moral virtues, encourage a soft government attitude toward crime. 3 strikes and you're out. How about 1 strike and you're out?
Oh my God, dude. 3 strikes laws are not good, in my opinion. The fact is, poverty is one of the leading causal factors of crime. Poverty. If you want to reduce crime, reduce poverty. Give people jobs. Give them the ability to work and make money, and crime will all but disappear. A certain petty crime, at the very least, like shoplifting or car theft or whatever. Not talking like corporate crime or whatever. That's going to have to be dealt with in a different way. But a lot of people don't even view corporate crime as crime in the first place. A lot of people view petty crime as the only type. White collar crime doesn't exist in a lot of people's minds. Anyway, the point is that if you want to eliminate crime, you do it by eliminating poverty, not by putting harsher sentences on. That actually does not help at all. That does not further your goal of reducing crime. It just doesn't. That's not how it works. It's not how it has ever worked. The Fourth Reich of the Rich, by the way, that book that he keeps citing, is a conspiracy theory book written by Des Griffin, published in 1976. It's a classic example of the kind of fringe conspiracy literature that Hovind loves to cite. Here's a little bit about the book. It claims international bankers, often coded anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, are orchestrating world events. It mixes legitimate historical facts with wild speculation and conspiracy thinking, promotes New World Order conspiracy theories. It's part of the John Birch Society adjacent conspiracy culture of the 70s. Wow, interesting. And here's a bit about Des Griffin, not a credentialed historian or economist, published through his own emissary publications, wrote multiple conspiracy books linking everything to a global elite plot. His work heavily overlaps with anti-Semitic conspiracy tropes, even if not explicitly stated. And the bottom line is, he's not a reliable source at all. He's a conspiracy theorist, Des Griffin is. I've never heard of him before, or the book, but it's rich that Hovind keeps citing him all through this entire video. Des Griffin's first sentence of his Wikipedia page: Des Griffin, born 1934 in Northern Ireland, is an American author who writes from what he claims to be a firmly Christian standpoint and who documents what he alleges are the global agendas of the New World Order, as declared by President George H.W. Bush on March 6, 1991. Wow. And yes, he uses the terms Freemason, Rothschild family, Rothschild's Illuminati agenda. That's wild, dude. I did a bunch of reading on the Rothschilds since this came up. The Rothschilds are basically just a family that existed in the 1700s, I believe. One of the first Rothschilds is Meyer, I believe was his name. Meyer. And he was Jewish, and he got rich basically by trading in currency. There was a taboo about how people weren't supposed to make money off of loaning or off of interest. Like Christians were not supposed to make money from gaining interest off of other Christians. It was kind of forbidden or whatever at the time, right? The Catholic Church had a weird thing about usury at the time. But Meyer, or Jews generally, didn't have a problem with loaning people money and gaining interest from it, as we don't have a problem with that today. That's like the basis of our economy, or a credit-based economy. The United States wouldn't exist if not for that. So anyway, Meyer decides to start trading currency, and he'd purchase a bunch of, French currency, and he would sell it for for another type of European currency, whatever other type of European currency was around at the time. I don't remember now. And that came in particularly handy during Napoleonic Wars because mercenaries who people wanted to hire across Europe would only take payment in their currency. So the countries around at the time would have to purchase a bunch of this currency from Meyer to pay for like the mercenaries. And that made him very, very rich. He was just, he just found a little niche that worked out really well for him. That's all. That's it. That's what it was. And down the line, the dude, like, it kind of became a clan where, like, the other family members took over. Like, there's his son, maybe, I think, took over the money and kind of continued that same trend. And by the way, like, where they were trading currency to other countries or whatever, that's where the claim comes from that Jews fund both sides of every war in Europe. It was because they were just trading currency. And they ended up becoming like one of the biggest banks, basically, in Europe. The Rothschild family did. So anyway, Meyer's son takes over, I believe. And there are accusations of insider trading. He knew something was going to happen before it happened. And he gets in a boat and sails all the way across this river to try to get to the trading floor before anybody else. And he buys a bunch of shares in this thing because he knows that this is about to take place. And he wouldn't have known about it if not for just typical billionaire shit. Insider trading, dirty, whatever. But it's not like Jews controlling all of the money in all of Europe and funding all wars. Like, that's pure unadulterated delusion. That's who the Rothschilds are. That's the story of the Rothschilds. That's what made them famous. That's what made them rich. And Kent Hovind and others who like make all these insane claims about the Rothschilds are fueling anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Hitler also talked about the Rothschilds being evil, but it was all complete delusion back then. It's the bottom line. They were just typical billionaire scumbags.
Crime, 3 strikes and you're out. How about 1 strike and you're out? Where's the victim's rights in all this?
Where's the mercy in all of this? Wasn't God all about mercy? Wasn't Jesus about forgiveness and love and caring and taking care of people? What happened to that? Suddenly forgot all about it, huh?
Divide the people into hostile groups. Get the people's minds off their government. Focus their attention on athletics. Get people more worried about, soccer or football than what the government's doing. In 1896, there were 311 athletes in the Olympics.
Okay.
And 100 years later, there were 13,000.
Okay. First of all, the population grew. And second, the divisions grew. We got better at doing certain things. We added new games. I mean, what's the surprise here? I don't understand. Why do you care? Is he saying that he thinks that, like, Satan is convincing people to, like, care about, like, the Olympics? Should we not care about the Olympics?
There are probably people in this room that know more about the local sports team or the Green Bay Packers than you do about who's the senators from your state. Our minds are off our government, all right? Control all media, like CNN, the Communist News Network. Don't give me...
The Communist News Network, CNN. Oh, my God. By the by, quick note... I would appreciate it if you follow me on Patreon. You don't have to donate, but if you can just follow me there, it would mean a lot. owenmorgan.com/Patreon.
Started on the media, okay? Destroy people's faith in their leaders, okay? Lenin said, those who cast the votes decide nothing. Those who count the votes decide everything.
Lenin? Wait, did he just say, he said Lenin, and now he's attributing this to Joseph Stalin. What?
Okay? Destroy people's faith in their leaders, okay? Lenin said, those...
Why did you just quote Lenin as saying this and it says Stalin underneath? This is what I'm talking about. This type of shit right here. Every word out of his mouth is bullshit. It's all fucking lies. My God, dude. I don't understand. Like, seriously, it blows me away how egregiously this dude lies and makes things up. It is so much. This is not a real Stalin quote. The actual origin... The earliest known version appears to be from the 60s to the 70s in Western anti-communist literature. It doesn't appear in any Stalin biography, Soviet archives, or contemporary accounts from his era. I should read a Stalin biography. I think it'd be interesting. That was just the name of the Communist Party. Bolsheviks. Anyway, in 1917, Vladimir Lenin, the leader of the Bolshevik Party, led a revolution. They called it the, God, I know I'm going to get it right. It's either the October Revolution. It's the October Revolution, right? Somebody correct me if I'm wrong there. I'm pretty sure. The October Revolution. October 1917. It happened right at the tail end of World War I. And they took over Russia, Tsarist Russia, and converted it to communist Russia, the USSR, in the name of communism. Lenin was a scumbag, actually. He was like an awful person. And he had a right-hand man, Stalin. In the 1920s, I think 1922 maybe, Lenin dies. Stalin takes over, becomes a completely brutal dictator. Stalin definitely completely destroyed democracy. And you know the funny thing about, or the ironic thing or whatever, about communism? The far right talks shit about communism and saying that communism failed and atheism failed and everything. The problem wasn't communism or atheism. The problem was authoritarianism, which the right wants more of. Every single time, authoritarianism leads to failed states and mass suffering and death every single time. Authoritarianism and fascism are different, by the by. For example, Stalin was not fascist, he was authoritarian. There is a difference. Van Briggs. The closest and most reliable source for this idea comes from a 1923 meeting of the Communist Party where Stalin said, "I consider it completely unimportant who the party will vote, or unimportant who in the party will vote or how, but what is extraordinarily important is this, how, who will count the votes and how." Really? Because I'm not seeing that. Okay, well, maybe that sounds a little bit different. That's possible. Well, anyway, yeah, Stalin was a bad guy. Stalin absolutely was brutal, was awful in every single way. I believe, I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure more people died at the hands of Stalin than died at the hands of Hitler. We could have just as easily fought a war with the Soviets for Europe, on behalf of Europe, and we could have just as easily been that outraged over what they did there in Russia as we are about what happened in Germany. Anyway, the point is that the problem was always authoritarianism, and it was never communism or whatever.
And their leaders, okay? Lenin said, those who cast the votes decide nothing. Those who count the votes decide everything.
Yeah, this is not a correct quote. At the very absolute best, this is incorrect. But he was a brutal dictator.
Interesting thinking. Who's programming these voting booths that are counting the ballots by computers? Who's programming this computer? Go to Vote Scam on the internet. Just type in Vote Scam and see what you find, okay?
Wait, I don't understand. One more time?
Interesting thinking. Who's programming these voting booths that are counting the ballots by computers?
Oh my God, that's so fascinating that he was coming up with voting conspiracy theories all the way back then. This is 06. That is wild to me, dude.
Who's programming this computer?
I mean, we know who programmed the computers. There's no question about that.
Vote Scam on the internet. Just
vote scam?
Type in Vote Scam and see what you find, okay?
Oh, I was hoping he was going to give us a website from the 2000s. That would have been so entertaining.